I'm Sue Norton. Can you hear me okay? I want you to know, pardon me? I want you to know that Sister Therese is my hero. I learned to know her right in the very beginning after my parents were murdered. And she was among the first people who reached out and touched me and let me know that I still was loved. My daddy and my stepmother were murdered in their rural farmhouse 20 years ago this month. And you know, they were just poor old people. And they rented their farm and they didn't even have a telephone. Their home was broke into by 3 individuals and they were on the run. BK, as I will call him, Robert Knighton, had been in prison for 30 of his 48 years. He had just gotten out of prison and was just at a halfway house preparing to go on parole. And everything just went all crazy. He and a young 17-year-old boy and a 22-year-old girl left the halfway house and they stole a van and they were on the run. 2 people were killed in Clinton, Missouri. And then as they traveled on through Oklahoma, they came to my folks' farm and they were looking for money and a different vehicle. They got $61 and an old beat up truck that was on its last legs. You know, murder does to a family, what it does is it takes away the resemblance of normal life. And it's really, really hard to ever get back to that normalcy. I pray that none of you ever have to go through that. At the time, I was caring for my brother, and he had AIDS. He died in March, 2 months later, here in Wichita. We had already had a double funeral. We already had dispersed of all of my folks' belongings so that we could get enough money to be able to pay for the funeral. They had no means of paying for those things. You know, I can't tell you how mixed up and crazy your life gets. Nothing is normal. But you know what? People must think that it's catching. People must think, don't you think so, Kristen? I think people think it's that maybe they might catch whatever's going on in that caused my folks to be murdered. No one came to our house and brought us food. No one came and prayed with me. No one said, you can't hate anymore. You know, you can't hate these people. You know what they did say? You have the right to hate now. They should hang them from the tree. They, you know, every little bad thing that they could say. It seemed like the rules all changed when it came to murder. Have you ever felt that way? When we got to the trial, which was the following October, my sister and I went together and we stayed in the same room together, but you know, we couldn't even talk to each other. We were so broken. I was feeling so sad and so scared. I didn't know why. You know, I never thought about the death penalty before. I was a mom and a grandma and a homemaker, and you know, why would you be thinking about the death penalty? We were, you know what? The law, that's what they're for, right? That's what you have courts for, and that's what you have the policemen for, and all that stuff. So when the district attorney came to my folks' house and said, we're going to get the death penalty for these guys. Well, I didn't say anything, you know. know, I didn't really know even what was involved with the death penalty. They already knew that that's what they were going to do, and that's what they did. The trial was really hard because every day something new was brought out, and they told us about really horrible things that happened during this crime spree. And I wasn't prepared for it. I didn't know it was going to be so ugly. I didn't know I was going to have to listen to the horrible information that came out during the, you know, when they operate on people after they're dead. What's it called? Yeah. You know, I didn't know I was going to have to listen to all that stuff. They were shot. My goodness, why do we have to know all that other stuff? I do know that I was very mixed up. And I didn't understand why. But people just kept saying, you know, killing, 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 killing. What I was hearing during that time was, I was hearing things about my folks, but I also was hearing about Robert Wesley Knighton, better known as BK, what his childhood had been like, how he had been beaten by the boyfriends of his mother. She was married 8 times and had 6 live-in lovers. That should tell you a little bit about what his home life was like. Why do kids fall through the cracks like that? There was nobody from his family there to be with him when he was in trial. They'd already gave up on him. Society, they were just there to see him be executed. Every time anybody looked at him, it was with pure hatred. And I kind of start taking the side of the victim. There, I considered him the victim. And I started thinking, poor guy, poor child. And then I thought, well, what am I thinking? I can't be thinking like that. It's my folks that were killed. But I began to realize that I didn't know if I believed in the death penalty. What would you do if you were in that trial and someone had been murdered and then you saw somebody that you realized maybe could have been a better person if someone had reached out and loved him? My grandma, she taught me lots of things when I was a child. And one of the things that she taught me was, you will not ever say hate. Not ever. You will love your brother who hit you with a crowbar or whatever, you don't ever say hate. It seemed like the tables had turned. I had spent a lot of months getting ready for this trial, but it just, I don't think I had spent enough time. How do you ever get to that point? I do know that I do not believe in the death penalty. The night before the trial was over, I went to bed crying, and I prayed, and I said, God, what am I supposed to be feeling? I'm in Perry, Oklahoma. I'm a born-again Christian. My grandma's always told me that I'm supposed to forgive and love people, and these people are telling me to hate. What am I supposed to be feeling? And when I went to sleep that night, I woke up in the middle of it, and this thought came in my head. No one just came right out, stood there and talked to me, and I wish that he would have, but he didn't. But they said, or he said, Sue, you don't have to hate him. You could forgive him. I knew that was my Lord talking to me right then. And I prayed and asked God to forgive me for ever having thought that I ever could have hated him. and that I did forgive BK right then. The next day I went to his cell and I told him, BK, I want you to know that if you're guilty, I don't hate you. He just looked at me like I was crazy. He was a great big guy, you know, kind of big, and he just looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, I am, meaning guilty, and I'm sorry. And a big old tear ran down his face. That was the first of many that he and I shared together. After he went, he did get the death penalty that day. You know, I realized that I was not going to feel better when he was executed, when he was dead. And I don't. My losses are not any less. My parents are still dead. Now he's dead. No one was the winner. Now, I believe that I have his blood on my hands. People think I mean that literally, but I really do feel responsible for his death. Because I'm a part of that society that allows executions. It's not okay. You know what? Listen to this. What if it was your child that committed the murder? Or that they said committed the murder? Like Sister Tree said, there's so many that have not, that were given the death penalty and they weren't even guilty. What if it were you? You had been sitting in your living room, you absolutely was home alone, and they said, we're going to put you in prison today, and by gosh, we're going to give you the death penalty. And you murdered so-and-so and so-and-so, and they proved it. They do it all the time. Dennis Fritz in Kansas City was in Oklahoma. And they found him not guilty. There's a lot of them. That just happens to be somebody I knew. My husband and I both went to BK's execution. I had been visiting him for all those 13 years. Took the act of Congress to get into the prison, let me tell you. But, you know, no one ever told me that I couldn't do it. It's what my chaplain friend said, and he said, no one ever told you that it couldn't be done. And so I just, you know, I picked on him and picked on him until they finally just said, go, we don't care. You know, and I went to the prison and I visited with him, and you know, I taught him about God. That was the first time that he learned about love. It was the first time that someone said, this is what I'm going to do, and then did it. And it was a positive thing for him. BK became a born-again Christian in the prison cell. He prayed with other people. He told them about God, and he did something I wasn't able to do because I was not able to go in there and minister to those other people. The people that were seeing BK at the end of the 13 years, they were seeing a different person than the person that I had seen during the trial, because he had changed. But you know what? Those people are the people that had to execute him. And as they gave him that 3-drug cocktail that is the lethal injection, he fell asleep, and then he gasped, and then he snored. And his body began to jerk, and his face got terribly red, like he was not able to get any air or breathe, and his lungs were paralyzed. His body was receiving the 3rd drug then, and that was the poison that would stop his heart. It took over 7 minutes for him to die. Oklahoma spent millions of dollars to send BK to heaven, because that's where he is today. I don't think that's what they intended. Now, I'm a murderer. I didn't stop his execution. I tried. I failed. I'm a part of the society that allowed BK to be killed. God is able to judge. I don't think I have to judge him, and I don't think I have to carry out his sentence. The legal part of our world, they don't listen to people like me. They listen to the victim's family members if they say and if they want the same thing that the district attorney wanted that day. And he wanted the death penalty, and he got it. And guess what? He was getting ready to be voted for again. You know, he was getting ready to be in an election again. So it became a political thing for him. I didn't even know anything about all that stuff back then. Reconciliation for me was to forgive. I never knew I was doing something that was wonderful. I just knew I was doing what I needed to do for me to be able to get on with the rest of my life. I could not live as a murder victim's family member with hate. I had never hated anyone before, and I wasn't going to start again. Reconciliation is not necessarily forgiving, though. For all of the murder victims' family members, reconciliation is meant to be whatever they need it to be. And for some of those people, it's just to be able to move on past that murder and get on with their life. Many people never learn to forgive. I'm so sorry, because it sure is a great thing. I want you to know that murder tears up a family. So many times the family members divorce, or they split up in other ways. They're depressed. They end up on drugs, whether they're prescriptions or otherwise, alcohol. They lose their jobs because they're dysfunctional. And life just becomes crazy. So I don't know how you as a community reach out to those people, but I ask you to please do so. Nobody came to me. I'm a Baptist, by the way. But you know what? The Catholics are the ones that reach out to me today. They don't condemn me like my own faith does. There are a few other faiths that reach out to me too, but I found out that forgiving was the only way for me to get on with my life and to function again. And as I told you earlier, I pray that none of you ever have to get a phone call like I did in January of 1990. Thank you for listening.